Marwan, you gave us the challenge at your opening to be child-centered. So before I say anything else, I want to have everyone think about the young man. I was very grateful that there was a child invited to do the Quranic recitation this morning. His name was Salim Juma al-Musharfi. He was listed as being in grade 8, and it was beautiful. But remember what Dr. Luis told us earlier this morning. In sub-Saharan Africa, only one child, 1 out of 10, can read a single sentence with comprehension when he or she is 10 years old. Globally, the average is only 3. What Salim did for us this morning, 9 out of 10 children in sub-Saharan Africa cannot do. Even here across the Middle East and North Africa region, it's only 4 children. Imagine being that child. Imagine being that child in a classroom. I think the thing to remember is these children who still cannot read with comprehension in their own national language, they're in school. They are going to a school each day. Many of them have been going to a school for 4 years, for 6 full years, and still can't read. Imagine how being that teacher, one of the things that I was shocked by the first time I taught was how isolating it is. That you are alone with these 20, 30, 50, maybe 80 children in this classroom, and you are expected to take them from not knowing so many things to knowing them all, or knowing as many as the government has asked you to do in the course of a year. It is so hard, so very hard. And right now, I think one of the biggest challenges is that even when we talk about globally, only 3 out of 10 children being able to read with comprehension, or in sub-Saharan Africa, I live in Nairobi, so I think about that a lot, that only 1 can. The thing that doesn't really address is the suspension of disbelief, the pretending that's happening in the classroom every day. Because there is a teacher there who most of the time in many of our countries is there, is showing up, is trying his or her best, and there are children there, and yet it's not working. Something deeply dysfunctional is happening. And so lots of things need to be reviewed so that hopefully in the future it isn't only Salim Juma who can recite the Quran for us, it is all 10 of the children. It is all of the millions of children. And so we try to work on that from not just that one classroom point of view, but systemically. But the start of how do you work on anything as a system, you have to be willing to acknowledge the reality of where you are. You have to acknowledge the data. You have to be willing to say, okay, the World Bank tells me, globally only 3 out of 10 children can read. Have I asked that in my own ministry? Have I had the courage to ask that of my own schools? Have I had the courage to do the research in my own country or my own state to see what the learning outcomes are? Because the first step to systemic change is admitting reality. And then as Dr. Luis told us, is to meet children where they are. Like if we give those children in grade 5 or grade 6, towards the end of primary school, the books that are leveled for grade 5 or grade 6, they're going to assume that child is reading with comprehension, that they're reading at 80 or 100 correct words per minute. But in many countries, children aren't reading at all or only reading at 20 words a minute, so the books don't fit. So if we can change the materials to meet kids where they are, if we can support teachers who are the core, I do think, along with Honorable Minister Albanian, school will be different 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. I don't know exactly how it will all be, but I do think the teacher will still be at the core of it, particularly for early childhood and primary. The human context of what it means to be human, what it means to be a citizen, what it means to share and to participate is still going to be taught by our teachers. And so making sure they're supported is so important. But where much is given, much is required. So when much more support is given to teachers, many more materials, you're meeting them where they need to be, and you're giving them continuous coaching. it's important to create digital transparency.
Mm.
Minister Sadiqi has mentioned the importance of bringing digital into education, so has Minister Albanian and our Deputy Prime Minister from Kyrgyzstan as well. But it's not just putting content out there digitally. I would say that part of the key is making everything we do within education transparent.
Yeah.
I think, again, about being that teacher alone in a classroom. My minister couldn't do anything to help me because he didn't know what I was doing. He didn't know if I was there. But if you can create systems, and this is one of our core ways of partnering and trying to co-design with partners, is to digitize everything so that you have digital tracking of your teachers, your school leaders, of your pupils, of their learning, because so then you, where you are, can see that, and that can drive your decision making. And then I trust that ministers will make the right decisions, and then they will see outcomes.
Thanks so much, Shannon.
Perhaps to build on the rest of our ministers, Sadiqi and Banyan and Wendy's comments there, I think the challenge is for each of you, right? To step up and to use your collective leadership amongst, from your colleagues, from those in your ministry, from your elected leaders. Like, we have found that the most critical element in a successful partnership to really work within the ministry to change practices for teachers, to have teachers welcome change and new support for them, and to see true change in learning. Like in Lagos State, where we have the privilege of working, they were performing much like the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa. Now they're performing more like Malaysia. They did that in 3 years, but only because the governor championed the program, because of the political elected leader supported his ministry to make systemic change. It's not easy, as Wendy said. It affects thousands, tens of thousands of people. You have to have collective leadership, but also a leader who is willing to, by name, stand up and say, I am going to do this. So I hope each of you can take that stand and inspire others to do so. And in another 5 years, I hope we're having a very different conversation.